We have to shear the sheep at least once a year. If we don't shear the sheep, it actually is worse for the sheep. It's cruel actually to leave the wool on because they become much more prone to fly strike and maggots in the wool, which eventually, after a day or two, if you don't spot it and treat it, get into the skin and cause them all sorts of serious damage. Also, as the year gets warmer, the sheep become prone to heat stress. As the wool gets longer and the coats become heavier, they get heat stress, and then it makes them sort of sick and prone to illness that way. Okay. So it is absolutely essential that we do that to prevent them getting poorly, actually.
Well, we'll come back to you in just a second. Let's put all of that to Elisa here. Obviously, you can't fail but be shocked by that video, which was covertly taken in Australia. But you're looking at the sheep that were sheared there on Charles's farm. Do you have a problem with that?
Well, I would say that if what Charles is saying is true, he is an anomaly. He is a diamond in the rough, because that is not indicative of the industry as a whole.
How much research have you done on the industry as a whole?
Yeah, and we have done undercover investigations at more than 30 shearing sheds and farms across 3 continents. Okay. And what we saw on every single one of those investigations were sheep being mutilated and being abused. The footage that you saw, that was only one small clip, and I have to say that was actually the most benign part of it. And if anyone has any doubt about the cruelty in the wool industry, I really challenge them to look at the footage. Sheep were punched in the face. They were stomped on. There was even a sheep that was so roughly handled that his neck was snapped. I would say that most people wouldn't have the stomach to watch even half of that footage. And if you can't watch it, we're just saying don't buy it. Just choose something else instead, because there's so many great alternatives that are warm, that are stylish, that don't harm animals.
There was saying that it is actually essential for the health of the sheep. So how can you argue with that?
Well, I think we shouldn't delude ourselves, because it's not as though sheep were just dropping dead left and right before humans invented the shearing process. And in the natural order of things, sheep would produce as much wool as they need to protect themselves in the winter, and then they would shed part of that wool all by themselves in the summer months. But of course, animal agriculture is greedy, and so farmers have genetically engineered sheep to produce far more wool than nature ever intended.
Is it greedy, Charles? Are you shearing your sheep for profit?
Absolutely not. I think I've just heard the biggest load of rubbish ever from the young lady in the studio. To quote that they've got videos from 30 sheds and it's absolutely rife through the industry, when there are absolutely hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of shearing systems and sheds throughout the world, is a very, very small percentage. So I don't, in my tiny brain, I can't see how you can actually collate a few instances it to being widespread throughout the industry. But let me just put the economics facts absolutely to bear to all your audience. It costs me £1.50 to shear a sheep every year. I return £1.25 for the value of the wool. So actually, I'm losing money on every sheep I shear. So therefore, there is no economic incentive to shear them. I do it because it's absolutely essential and necessary for the health and welfare and the well-being of my sheep.
So let's just put that to Lisa. So nothing to do with greed there. It's actually costing him money to do it. Why would he do that?
Well, come on. Charles is in this business to turn a profit. He's not in this out of some sense of humanitarian goodness. And, you know, the thing to remember here is it's 2017. We actually don't need to drape ourselves in the skins of animals and the hairs of animals, because there's other options available.
So what are the other options? What do we put ourselves in?
Oh, if you go to the high street or from designer racks, there is cotton, there's bamboo, there's hemp, there's recycled polyester. When it comes to leather, we're actually seeing leather being made out of pineapples, out of apples, out of mushrooms. The possibilities are really endless from every price point on every high street shop.
So you boycott the wool this winter and put farmers like him across the country, across the world, out of business. It's not very friendly.
Well, look, as powerful as the animal rights movement is, social change doesn't happen overnight, or very rarely does it happen overnight. We see change over the course of years, over the course of generations, and it's not unrealistic to think that farmers can retrain, that this industry can evolve. That's the way that it's always been.
Wouldn't it be better? Isn't it better if you were fighting for a tighter regulation of the industry rather than a ban?
you know, it's like saying, how can we make this cruel thing slightly less cruel? Because at the end of the day, we are still exploiting these animals for their hair, for something that belongs to them, not to us. And also, let's not forget that these animals, once their wool production weans, once they're no longer seen as commercially viable, they're sent to the slaughterhouse. They don't have a happy retirement.
And you compare us wearing wool now to the fur industry 40 years ago, say?
Yeah, you know, and as I say, the video footage that we uncovered, this wasn't doctored footage. This is actual footage of what happens in shearing sheds across the world. And it is sickening. It is every bit as violent and as bloody and as grim as anything we've seen in the fur industry.
Well, it didn't look like that on Charles's farm. What do you say to that, Charles? Is that the fur industry?
Look, to be perfectly honest, Phil, I'm not an expert on the fur industry, and I know that people have campaigned for a long time to stop that practice of animals being kept in cages. I certainly wouldn't be a fan of that sort of behaviour either. But what I want to make people aware of is that I keep sheep. Yes, I do make it to try and make a profit, and 1 year in 3 I do, and sometimes I make break even, sometimes I lose money. But wool is a naturally occurring product. It's far better for the environment than man-made fibres, in my opinion, and actually we should get behind and we should support the wool industry, because if we didn't have a viable farming industry, we wouldn't have these great landscapes and the green fields and the moors and mountains that people in this country continue to want to visit and enjoy. It's actually farmed agriculture that has created that landscape and will do into the future, I believe, because it's essential that we utilise those resources to feed and clothe the growing global population.